I'm Michelle McDonald, and this is my informative speech number 2. Here are my note cards. This is my audience. This is my speech. Though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It's a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. This was a speech presented by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on August 28, 1963, and was posted on the American Rhetoric for people to read. He spoke to an enormous group of civil rights marchers in the nonviolent right for equality. Today I'm going to inform my audience about the famous historical speaker, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King's vision was to join everyone together through his nonviolent protests and most famous speech, I Have a Dream. Martin Luther was a great activist. He was a very influential man and changed the actions of equality in the government, but it was not an easy path that he chose for his life. Now I will discuss the protests that Martin Luther took place in. Martin Luther was both a Baptist minister and civil rights activist. His impact on race relations began in the mid-1950s. In the government archives, it claimed that he headed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and ended the legal segregation of African American citizens in the South and many other areas of the nation. Martin Luther King Jr. also was one of the main reasons as to why the creation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 came about. The biography of King says that he also received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, along with several other honors. In effect, King's influence and perseverance on society created these acts and began to form equality for the first time. Martin Luther's successful activism was largely due to his influence among the people. King's speech in 1963, known by the title I Have a Dream, is one of the most remembered speeches throughout history, and he too is considered to be one of the most acclaimed African American leaders in history. King constructed a demonstration in downtown Birmingham, Alabama, for the nonviolent fight for equality. But was jailed along with many of his supporters. This event, though, drew nationwide attention. He did not stop his influence once he was arrested. Martin Luther wrote his theory of nonviolence within the jail walls of Birmingham. The biography on King says that he discussed nonviolent direct actions must seek to create such a crisis and foster such tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate, is forced to confront the issue. In the end of the campaign in Birmingham, King and his supporters were released, and they continued to make plans for protesting, asking for peaceful change. This was when Martin Luther King presented a life-changing speech and had the historic March on Washington that drew more than 200,000 people to the Lincoln Memorial Center. King shed light on one of the main problems society had, which was segregation. He did this in a very well-mannered, nonviolent way, which is why he was so respected by many. Martin Luther changed the direction of the government pertaining to equality, but it was not an easy path that this influential speaker followed. King struggled with trying to gain progress in his nonviolent fight for equality. On March 7, 1965, although King promoted peaceful protest, violence occurred in a civil rights march that was going to Alabama's capital in Montgomery. The marchers were harshly injured, and some were even hospitalized. This event was called Bloody Sunday. A second march was canceled because of a restraining order that prevented it from taking place. King also planned a third march that crossed the Pettus Bridge, where they were confronted with state troopers and barricades. Instead of bringing violence upon the protesters, they knelt in prayer and then returned home. This lost some support of some young African American leaders, but continued to raise support in order to pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965. King never gave up on his nonviolent marches, and with the support of his followers, they were able to overcome their barriers and pass laws that helped create equality. King was a role model amongst many, and was a man that was true to his word in creating nonviolent protests to achieve his main goal of equality. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. proved that violence is not always the answer when trying to have his voice heard, which helped gain supporters for him to gain equality in society. From King's persistent activism and sense of influence he was able to continue forward with his support in advancing equal rights in America. King's memorable marches and speech enabled him to make a great change in society. As King would say, with this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. Thank you very much. This is my audience.